Good morning, Tarleton State. Welcome to the first and only broadcast of EdSoc News. I'm Louis Zapata, and this is my co-host.
I'm my doctor.
And today we have some very interesting topics to discuss. We'll be going over the controversy of standardized testing and its impact on graduation. Do you remember those?
Oh yeah, the math portion was the worst.
You can say that again.
Oh yeah, the
I
math.
didn't mean to say it again.
I'll never graduate!
Now, it started with a man called, what was his name? Horseman, I believe. Yes, in the mid-19th century. He suggested that a kind of test should be given in order to gain information about the quality of education being given and the level of learning in the schools in the Boston area. They were assessing the students' knowledge and proficiency. But it wasn't popular then as it is now. It didn't start spreading until about the Second World War, and especially during the Cold War. What was it I read somewhere by, who was it? Gallagher. That was his name. In 2003, national leaders thought that maintaining a complete position in the world was dependent on identifying students' talent in academic and leadership and managerial skills. This ended with a test determining a person's advancement and placement. In 1965, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act was passed. This gave money to underfunded schools. The schools that benefited the most from this were considered Title I schools, which have at least 40% of their students in low-income families. Instruction didn't take much of a hit until the 70s, when accountability became a prominent issue. From that point forward, standardized testing grew to be much more common from state to state. Now, No Child Left Behind Act was basically an extension of the previously mentioned Elementary and Secondary Education Act. It was put into place in early January of 2002, and it made sure that every child, no matter their status in life, would have the tools required to give them a chance to pass these tests.
Now, since this is a special for a Texas educational psychology class, would you give us some background on the tests there?
Possibly. The TOS test was given from 1991 through 2002. It was replaced by the TAKS test. These two tests required students to pass the 11th grade to graduate. But there really wasn't much fuss about it because there were so many opportunities for the students to retake the test. But this new test is a little bit different. The STAR test, or the State of Texas Assessment of Academic Readiness test, students up to the 8th grade separately from the students in high school. This test, unlike the ones before it, used to size up how prepared a student is for college or a career. Some even call it a college readiness exam. However, it is a major change for the students in high school. They will have to take a series of end-of-course exams, and 50% of the score earned on these exams is required to go to the student's course grade. The only thing that hasn't changed is that you must pass the end-of-course exam to graduate.
Welcome back to our coverage of Tax Week 2010. I'm Nancy Hockey, and our cameras followed around our spotlight player this week, Johnny Test-Taker, to give us a more in-depth feel of how a true champion trains for this week of tests. I'm joined right now by Susie Toss, who is the chief correspondent from the Texas Test Taking Bureau. Thank you for joining us, Susie.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Susie will be my guest commentator as we get right into the action. I'm being told that the test has just been distributed. And here we go. We see the number 2 pencil in the right hand equipped with a great eraser, as well as the calculator on the left, ready to go.
And he wrote his name. That's a good start.
Great penmanship there, lots of practice.
Oh, here comes the sample question.
Sample questions looking good. He's taking his time, really reading to make sure he understands what the question is asking.
You gotta make sure you get it before you start to work it out.
You really do.
Taking extra time up, he got out his calculator.
Calculators are allowed on certain levels of the test. Lower levels, not so much, but at a grade 11 level, they are definitely needed.
He's got a pink pen, maybe for breast cancer awareness.
Maybe for good luck. Color does stimulate the mind.
Still on that calculator.
That's okay. You know, I like his strategy. He really is taking his time to work out every single option there, because you never know. They might throw in something that's just a little bit different that ends up being the wrong answer.
Hate it when that happens.
It's quite ridiculous.
Very often, though.
Very often. Oh, he's showing his work. Even though you don't get extra points for showing work on this test, it is, of course, always helpful to really figure out how you get to that answer.
Are children encouraged to work out the problem on the paper?
Teachers normally recommend it on their practice test when they take it in school, but we saw him take a drink of water. Water and snacks are allowed. They do sometimes encourage to take random breaks throughout the test just to give your brain a little bit of a rest. Really helps you.
Einstein's. I feel smarter already.
Welcome back. We'll recap for those of you who have just tuned in. We're joined today by 2 education majors, and our topic is standardized testing. We haven't gotten very far because of differing opinions, so we'll continue with our opposing argument. Ms. Peters, thank you again for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Now, as you've said many times before, you're not the biggest fan of standardized testing, and if Mr. Moore will please refrain from speaking, we'll move right along.
Yes, I am not a big fan of standardized testing or accountability testing, if you don't mind. There are way too many factors at play and not enough of them are taken into account. Let's say, for instance, test anxiety. There are students that get straight A's in all of their classes, but when one of these tests comes around, the anxiety builds so much that they fail and then they don't get to graduate.
Wait, so you're saying they don't get to graduate even if they have, say, a 4.0?
That's exactly what I'm saying. How can we judge a student's progress without taking into consideration these outside factors? A child could be sick that day, maybe had a fight with a parent. A student might understand all the material, but it may not show on a test because of some of these factors.
And the student shouldn't be more prepared just in case something like this arises?
Well, I mean, how could they be? Like I just said, you can't prepare a child to push out everything besides the test. It's impossible.
Mr. Moore, I see you have a comment.
Yes, of course I did. Now, these cases are few and far in between. The information in these exams is being taught to the students in their schools. These tests are given to see if they are actually learning anything, which is why they are called accountability tests. And it isn't just the students that are being held accountable, but the teachers as well.
The educators? Why?
Teachers are just as responsible for the test as the students are. If students of a single teacher keep failing, or if a certain percentage of their students fail every year, we know that there is something that the teacher is doing wrong and not just the students.
This leads us to another topic, teaching to the test. Some say that our teachers are just getting lazy. They're spoon-feeding the information to their students.
Who's to say that teaching to the test is a bad thing?
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
Is it my turn to talk? I'm pretty sure it's my turn.
Yes, it is. Ms. Peters, please let the man speak.
Thank you. Who's to say that it's a bad thing? The standards for these tests were set by the state, and the information on them is considered what the students should know by the time they graduate. If they're being taught what they need to pass, what's the problem?
Your argument?
Well, tell me something. Have you ever had to calculate the volume of a cylinder since you graduated? Yeah, me either. Because of these tests, our youth aren't getting the education they need to be well-rounded citizens. They're missing deeper knowledge in history and literature that they may not need to know to pass some exam, but it would help further their worldly knowledge. Students are just learning the bare minimum.
We're teaching them what they will need to know to be successful students of society.
By simply teaching them what they need to know to pass the tests.
You're damn right.
If I may continue, please.
Of course.
If educators didn't have to worry about their students passing standardized tests, they could spend time preparing them for a higher level of education. The other problem with these tests is that when students worry about these exams, they only want to know what's going to be on them. Some might think that learning beyond what they need to is superfluous, or maybe that it could take away from what they need to know by adding more information to their lessons.
Your point, please.
My point is this. You say they're being taught what they need to know to be successful, but I say we're holding them back. By hanging standardized tests over their heads, we're keeping them from wanting to learn more. Yes, we want them to be successful, but they should want to be innovative and inspired.
Is there any way around this?
Around what?
Teaching to the test.
May I take this one?
Be my guest.
I am your guest.
Please move along.
We can possibly teach to the test and keep it creative.
And how would you go about doing that?
I'll give you an example. Inquiry learning techniques.
Would you like to elaborate?
Yes, my dear. Inquiry learning. I'm surprised you don't already know about this. It's very innovative. It gives students an opportunity to explore an idea or problem by themselves before the teacher comes in. It gives them a chance to come up with their own ideas and learn from their own mistakes. Now, if that doesn't boost creativity, then I don't know what does.
Moving right along. What are your feelings towards political involvement in standardized testing?
Do you even have to ask?
It's on my note card, so yeah.
Alright, like No Child Left Behind?
Yes.
Well, No Child Left Behind was actually an act of Congress. It was a reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, which was passed in 1965. It supported standard-based education reform based on the premise that setting higher standards and measurable goals will improve individual results in education.
We wanted your opinion, not a history lesson.
Yes, well, what I really want to go over is how it changed the way schools are funded. And this isn't such a bad thing, but I'm not saying that this isn't sometimes abused. It did raise federal spending on education by
59.8%, I think.
Yes, thank you. But without this federal funding going on in schools, test scores may plummet.
Now that's just about the craziest thing I've ever heard.
You're the craziest thing I've ever heard.
All right. Well, this segment is essentially finished, so join us next time.